History is full of facts that never made it into the standard version of the story. These 8 shorts show the decision, contradiction, or document that changed what we know. Ira L. Cooper was St. Louis's first black detective, working inside the police force, not standing outside it as a symbol. He was an American police detective in St. Louis, serving within a city department that had not yet had an African American detective. The decisive fact was his appointment to the detective role itself. That made him the first African American police detective in the city. That moved a black officer into a job title tied to investigation and authority inside a major urban institution. The change was documented in St. Louis police history. His name now belongs in the record of St. Louis policing as Ira Luther Cooper, the first African American detective there. A Chicago radio station owner tried to destroy records tied to a documentary about a race riot. These were documentary records, not ordinary station paperwork. They belonged to material meant to preserve what had been reported and assembled. The documentary covered a race riot, so the records carried more than broadcast notes. Destroying them would have removed part of the source trail around that event. The attempt shows how control over media can reach into the historical record itself. The fight was not only over airtime, but over what survived. What remains is the warning: a Chicago radio station could shape memory by trying to erase the records behind a documentary. John Vickers hid fugitive slaves inside the kiln at his pottery. The place where he fired clay became a hiding place. Vickers was a Quaker abolitionist, and he worked as a potter. His trade gave him daily access to the kiln and the yard around it. That mattered because the kiln was already part of normal work, so it could blend into the rhythm of the shop. A busy worksite made the hiding place less obvious. By using the kiln, Vickers turned an ordinary trade site into covert refuge. The workshop became part of anti-slavery resistance. A pottery kiln was supposed to fire clay, not shelter people. In Vickers's hands, the same firelit workspace served a hidden human purpose. In 1876, more than 90% of Connecticut voters agreed to repeal a white-only voting requirement. The rule was a formal condition for voting, not just an informal habit. That made the ballot a direct test of who the state recognized as eligible. The size of the vote mattered because it was overwhelming. With that margin, the repeal became a clear legal reversal instead of a narrow compromise. After the repeal, Connecticut no longer kept white race as a written voting requirement. The legal definition of an eligible voter changed on the record. The result was a documented shift in who could be recognized as a voter in Connecticut. A rule written for exclusion had been rejected by the people who voted under it. Emperor Jahangir ordered a court artist to paint a dying nobleman after the man's emaciated condition shocked him. Jahangir ruled the Mughal Empire from 1605 to 1627. At court, imperial attention could turn a private moment into recorded evidence. His amazement led to a direct order for a court artist to capture the nobleman's condition. The painting was meant to preserve what the emperor saw in that moment. That order turned a dying man into a subject of official court art. It also made the emperor's reaction part of the record, not just the illness. The surviving image reflects imperial curiosity and close observation. It shows how one ruler's attention could transform suffering into a courtly document. Kenya's first government chief whip survived 9 years in detention under British colonizers. That man was John David Calley, a name tied to Kenya's early parliamentary leadership. The office of chief whip meant helping hold a government line in the legislature. British colonial authorities detained him, and the detention lasted 9 years. No extra details are needed to see the scale of that interruption. 9 years away from public life did not end his political identity. His record still links leadership with prolonged confinement under colonial rule. That is why John David Calley holds a place in Kenya's political history. He stands remembered both as chief whip and as a man who endured detention. Liechtenstein's prime minister, Gustav Schaedler, was forced to resign because of an embezzlement scandal. He held the country's top government office, so the scandal reached the center of state authority. In a small principality, that office carried direct political weight. Embezzlement means taking money entrusted to an office and using it improperly. Once that charge attached to the leader, resignation became the only documented outcome supplied here. Schaedler did not just face criticism, he was removed from the role by resignation, turning a financial scandal into a change at the top of government. The consequence was immediate. Liechtenstein's head of government was gone because trust in the office had been broken by financial misconduct. The Albatross file says Goh Keng Swee never raised a looser federation in talks with Malaysian leaders, even though Lee Kuan Yew told him to. That file is a bundle of cabinet papers, confidential memoranda, and Goh Keng Swee's handwritten records. It covers the months before Singapore left Malaysia in 1965. The records matter because they show confidential talks about constitutional rearrangements had already begun in 1964. After the July racial riots, those discussions took on new urgency. The file links Singapore's People's Action Party and Malaysia's Alliance Party through those private discussions. It suggests separation was being worked through in constitutional terms before the final break. Seen together, the memoranda and handwritten notes leave a more gradual paper trail than a sudden expulsion alone. The documentary record reaches back to the talks that shaped the final separation. If one of these changed how you see history, the next one probably will too. Subscribe and tell us which fact surprised you most.